Good day all. I hope you all are fine, hale and hearty. Today is going to be my 10th lecture in continuation with the 9th one which I had imparted earlier. I thank you all for giving your feedbacks and your queries, which really helped me to customize the lecture so that it would be able to help you and facilitate your course. Today, I'm going to talk about the ship handling, which I talked partially in the last lecture as well. As you would recall, I started with the basics of the hydrodynamics for you all to understand before I come to the ship handling. Therefore, today we're going to talk about how we manage to turn the vessel in a river or in an estuary using the anchor when we do not have a tug. Also bear in mind that now I'm trying to go step by step with the lectures. As I said earlier in my previous lectures, that if the duration is long, then it becomes a bit difficult for me to upload the lectures in YouTube and on my Facebook. So I will try explaining you step by step. Before I do that, from the old school thoughts or from the old school what we have been taught, slow speed control is the best control. I've come across many video clips and I've done few incident investigations as well, where the speed was not in control. See what happens. If you are going at a slow speed, you can always increase the speed. But to reduce the speed, I'm not talking about the emergency, but under the normal given circumstances, you will have to give equivalent amount of the stern thrust, and that sometimes the time duration or the proximity of the danger, it may not be possible, and that's how the calamities start happening. So, in this figure, I've drawn 5 ships here. In this figure, we concentrate on the left hand of the boat, left side of the boat. This vessel is coming up, the tide is coming and pushing her from stern. Now what happens when the tide is or the current is pushing you from stern? The steering is not very effective. Therefore, you must have come across whenever the pilot is taking you alongside, he would be going for a certain amount of or certain short span of time where the tide is pushing him from behind. But the moment you turn around, you start stemming the tide, your maneuvering becomes much easier. That's what we're going to see here. Many things what I've shown you here are from my own practical experience, which I'm sharing with you as a legacy, which you may not find in many of the books, or probably none of them. I'm not challenging this, but what I'm saying, what all I've seen, I have not found those things which I'm going to impart with you. So, the vessel which is coming up here, the tide is going from stern. Case number 1, the slow speed control, the mantra as what I said earlier, should be always borne in mind. So the vessel is coming up here, we are at slow speed control, maybe slow ahead, slow ahead, as the steerage would make it easier for us to steer the vessel because the current is pushing us from behind. Figure number 2. Before we think of dropping the anchor, now I've written here speed over ground. The speed over ground before we think of turning around should be approximately 2 knots, because this is the place we are going to berth. We are going to berth the ship over here. The other thumb rule is, let's say we are going to berth here, the extremities of the berth should be, when I take a beam bearing here from the pivot axis and take an angle over here, it should be 45 degrees from the southern extremities of the berth. Like I've drawn here 45 degrees angle over here, taking from pivot point. Now this is all based on the practical experience what I'm sharing with you. So, taking this angle approximately 45 degrees from the pivot point, we should be at speed of approximate 2 knots before we let go or walk back our anchor. Now, in this particular scenario, we are going to turn to starboard. So, we are going to use the starboard anchor because we are going to turn to starboard. Now, how it's going to happen? Here we are at slow speed. We are at slow speed control, dead slow, slow ahead. By this time we have reached here, we have to reduce the speed because you have to decide the leg. Let's say the distance between this and this may be around 3 or 4 approximate miles or maybe 5 miles where you can control the speed, and by this time before you drop the hook, the starboard anchor, you should be approximately 2 knots or lesser if possible. This is to ensure that you do not have wear and tear and avoid the damage to the anchor and the chain. So at this juncture we are at 2 knots or less than 2 knots. That's the reason I've written maximum speed of over ground should be 2 knots, because remember the current is pushing us from behind all this while, what I've drawn here. When we are approximately 45 degrees from the southern extremities of this berth and we are almost coming abeam at from the same point to the northern extremities of the berth as what I've depicted over here, that's the time you let go the anchor. The condition is the speed should be less than 2 knots and you're probably almost stopped as far as the engine is concerned because the current is pushing you. Now you see what happens. In the figure number 3, when you pay out this, you pay out say about 4 to 6 times the scope. If the depth is 20 meters, you pay out 80 meters. Or if the depth 80 to say 100 or 120 meters, I would say around 5 to 6 times the scope should be the depth. The scope should be 5 to 6 times the depth. So let me make it clear that the scope should be 4 to 6 times. I've written approximately. That also depends on the sea bottom, the tide what you're experiencing, but on an average with the practical aspect around 4 to 6 times the depth of the water you should pay out the shackle, the scope. That's what is called the scope. Once you've done that, the vessel will start swinging to starboard. One is because of the momentum of the chain. The other thing is the current is pushing you from here. The tide, as you start turning around, the tide will start pushing you here, which is depicted in figure number 3. Now, at this point of time, if you can timely take an action, you will swing it faster without damaging the cable or the anchor. The current is pushing us from here, it's coming from here and pushing us from here. At that point of time, if you don't have any speed, you have the lateral movement of the ship is more, you can give shots, kicks ahead, not a step, short kicks ahead. At that point of time, you should also start shortening the cable. Let's say if we have paid 6 shots, you start working on the cable as and how the tension eases off on the cable. Now what will that do? That will give a fulcrum from the pivot axis as you're picking up the chain over here, as and how the slack comes. It's going to turn the ship faster. Let me put it again. That in case number 3, as I said earlier, you paid 4 to 6 times the scope of the depth. At this point of time, you start giving short kicks ahead. Means dead slow ahead, stop. Dead slow ahead, stop. At the same time, you can ask, the master would ask the chief officer or the person standing at the bow to start shortening the cables, to start pick up the shackles as much as it comes without tension. Because as the ship is going to turn to starboard, the tension is going to start easing off. Till such time you come to this figure number 4, where you have shortened the cable and the vessel has swung around heading southerly. Because if we talk about this going upstream northerly, the vessel has started heading southerly in figure number 4. Now, once that has happened, you have turned around to say in figure number 4 to southerly angle where you are supposed to go, because in this particular case we are planning to go port side alongside. That's the reason we use this starboard anchor. So, figure number 4, we have turned around southerly. The anchor cable is still there. Now keep on picking up the anchor cable as and how it is easier for you, as in how the slack comes. At that point of time, you should have approximately you are making approximately 20 to 25 degrees an angle to the place, to the berth where you are heading for. That's the reason I've written 20 to 25 degrees angle you are making to the berth where you are heading for. So again, to repeat myself, at figure number 3, we have given short dead slow ahead kicks and we are shortening the cable. By such time we are swung around because the tide is pushing the vessel on the starboard quarter and facilitating the turning. At the same time we are shortening the cable. See the kind of turning effect it is giving. One is because of the current, second is because of the cable what you're shortening, so the bow is swinging faster to starboard. You're not wasting much time. Plus your swing circle at the anchor cable is also reduced, because who knows, you may have some shallow patches or something here. This is the best way to turn the ship 180 degrees. Give slow, dead slow ahead, short kicks, dead slow ahead and stop. At the same time start shortening the cable. So that brings us to figure number 4, which I said earlier. At this point of time, start retrieving the cable and the anchor, however best you can, because you're stemming the tide, so you don't have any problem to go ahead. So you may have to probably give a kick dead slow ahead till such time you retrieve the cable. Now at that point of time, once the cable is retrieved, the anchor is home, this point of time you start making an angle of 20 to 25 degrees. But as I said earlier, that in figure number 1, when we are approaching, we are making approximately an angle of 45 degrees, and when the bow is almost abeam to the extremities of the berth. Or you take, if you talk to me or somebody may ask me, sir, how much should be the distance between this and this? That is, in case the berth is still going extended further. You don't have to go right north. So then the thumb rule is, this distance should be at least twice the ship's length. When you're making an angle of 45 degrees, you make twice the ship's length of this, and the distance between this, the berth, and this should be 1 ship's length. Approximately 1 ship's length. Make this 45 degrees, and this triangle, this is not a triangle, this I've given a distance, this distance to make a safe turning around so that you don't come close to the berth. This distance should be 1 ship length at least, and this should be approximately 2 ships length. That is when the angle is 45 degrees. So coming back to our original thing, we have come to point number 5, where we are heading towards the berth at an angle of 20 to 25 degrees towards the place where we are going to berth, and we are stemming the tide. Tide is helping us. At that point of time, we can utilize in our favor the transverse thrust. This is for a right hand screw. That is, now the vessel is heading this way, we have to go ahead. We go ahead, we give short dead slow ahead and we give the starboard helm to straighten her up. In case coming close to the berth, she doesn't straighten her up, she is not getting straightened up, parallel to the berth, then you have to give dead slow astern, so that on a right hand screw the bow will start canting to the starboard. So that will bring the vessel close to the berth as well as parallel to the berth. That is, once your ship's heading and the berth are parallel in line. Which brings us to figure number 6. That is from figure number 5 to figure number 6, as what we said. To make the vessel parallel, we will have to give stern moment, so that the bow cants to starboard and the stern becomes close to the berth, and bow is also becoming close to the berth. At that point of time, once we are maneuvering slow and steady easily, we of course have anchor home in this from this position number 4. We are now in position number 6, and let's call this position number 7, where we are alongside. At that point of time, once you are coming, before you come to position number 7 or figure number 7, you will have to prepare your head ropes. Your head ropes should be given first. Once your head ropes are given first, you probably will pay the head ropes as what I've seen with the dotted line. You can start hauling the vessel with the head ropes. And probably you may have to give short, dead slow ahead kicks, keeping the bow clear. You start hauling the ship. Once the vessel is becoming close to coming close to the berth, you start giving your aft springs. Now, when you give the after springs, how it helps? You give the aft springs, you start taking tension on the aft springs, the vessel will move forward automatically. So, you have 2 tools here. One is the head rope, second is the spring lines, the aft spring lines. You start working on them. One will bring the bow closer, second will try to bring the stern also inside, looking at the fulcrum, at the same time will move the ship forward. Once you've done that, once your headlines and after springs are taut in position, you're coming in position, that's when you should give your forward springs, because springs are the one, if we work on the after springs, it brings the ship forward. When we use the forward springs, it brings the ship aft. So once you're almost in position, you've given head ropes and springs aft, you give the third ropes to be given will be the springs forward. Once you give the springs forward, the vessel is now tied up like this. She can't move fore and aft. That is, once you're aligned with your head ropes and after springs, you then give the forward springs. So once the springs are aligned, head ropes are taut, that's when you give your stern and breast respectively. So let me repeat myself. Why I repeat? Just to make sure that I have not jumped out anything, and I want to make sure that people also understand what I'm trying to say. As the vessel comes from point number 6 or figure number 6 to figure number 7, you start reeling out your head ropes, give it to the shoreman, to the lineman. He will hook up the head ropes over here. Once the head ropes are tied up, you start working on the head ropes. Same time, give stern thrust, the stern movement to align the stern and the bow to make it parallel. Same time, you are just also getting hauled with the head ropes. But when I say stern kicks, it should be short stern kicks. Should not be slow stern or half a stern. No, I don't think you would require it. You will have to give dead slow stern, maximum slow stern. But that's for a short duration, so that the bow cants to starboard and you're parallel to the jetty. If this is the ship, this is the jetty, and the vessel is heading like this, you start giving dead slow astern. At the same time, you start hauling the vessel on the head ropes. The bow will start canting to starboard, and in case need be, because you're stemming the tide at this point of time, you may have to give slow astern, but remember, for a shorter duration. If you give it for a longer duration, you'll part this headlines. Once you are coming parallel to this, your bow, your head ropes will start acting at an angle, and they will start bringing the vessel close to the jetty. At the same time, you give the springs aft. After springs will haul the ship further ahead in case you need to align. Once your head ropes and after springs are tight, that's when you give the forward springs. Once you've given the head ropes, the forward springs, you give the aft springs. Sorry. Once you've given the head ropes, the forward springs, the aft springs, then you give the forward springs. So that's how we bring her alongside. Now the scenario is, what if in case the vessel has to move out without a tug? That is notified to the pilot, to the master well in advance. In that particular case, this scenario changes completely. In that case, coming from this figure, number 5, number 6, when we come to this number 7, what's to be done? The vessel has to move further ahead. That is, coming at least 1/4, nearly close to midships. Once you're nearly midships, when it is abeam to the berth, that's when you have to drop the starboard anchor. That's when you have to drop the starboard anchor, because you have to come out also. And then you have to start falling back. How do we fall back? In this case, we have to give the forward springs first, because forward springs, once we give, it is going to help us to haul the ship back aft. At the same time, once the spring forward are given, we give the stern ropes. We give the stern ropes here. So we work on the forward springs and the stern ropes. We work on them together and start moving aft. At the same time, we pay out the chain on the starboard anchor to ensure that there is not much strain on the anchor chain. Otherwise, we'll not be able to move. So we'll have to work together. In this case, as I said earlier, we'll have to give the forward springs, start working on the forward springs, and pay out the anchor chain as and how the weight comes. Same time, we have to give the stern lines and start working on the stern lines and the springs forward. That will start bringing the ship aft. And in case, if need be, we may have to give short stern kicks. Remember, the bow will not normally cant to starboard because you already have the springs tied up, but it will facilitate you to come aft. Because the second force what you're using in tandem with the stern kick is your stern ropes. So, forward springs you've given the stern ropes. Once these two ropes are tied up and you're coming almost in position, that's when you give your headline. That's when you give your head ropes. Because what the head rope is going to do, once you're aligned and you're tied up, it will not let her fall back because you're stemming the tide same time. So, in the sequence, first you give the spring lines forward, you give the stern lines aft, you give the head ropes at the bow. This will hold your vessel in position. Once that is done, that's when you give your aft spring and your breast ropes. Again, to repeat, to ensure that we've understood this correctly, this is a case scenario in which the vessel is coming to port side for departure. She perhaps may require a tug and the tug will be available. But when you're departing, in case the tug is not available, then we will have to use this maneuver. That is, you will have to come almost in this position when the port side of the vessel is almost midship to the jetty. That's when we let go or walk back the starboard anchor, and then we start falling back with the help of the ropes. I believe there is some instruction work also going on, so there might be some disturbance. In case you would like me to repeat this lecture, if it is not understood, I shall do so. Till such time, goodbye, take care, thank you very much, stay safe.